Foundation and everyone at the Foundation for honoring the entire Abeytia family today because of the selfless sacrifices it has made to the farm worker movement. This day is especially meaningful because it does recognize the entire Abeytia family, which is now spread out across the country in states including Arizona, California, Tennessee, Texas, and Hawaii. This honor is also significant because it spans multiple generations of the same family, from our patriarchs who are now mostly gone, to a new generation of young family activists who are continuing the legacy, and everyone in between. Let us share a little about family members who are receiving special mention today. My parents, Pete and Eleanor, devoted many years tirelessly helping Latino veterans, their families, and the poor through the American Legion. They held a strong passion for the United Farm Workers movement. Eleanor worked in farm labor as a child, and both she and Pete worked in packing sheds and in the fields as a young married couple. They knew the hardships and abuses. So later, while they still didn't have much, my parents always gave to the UFW. Caesar often took meals at our home, and my parents cooked and delivered many meals to UFW activists. They truly believed in La Causa. My uncle, Ray Abeytia, moved from Arizona to Santa Maria, California in 1935. He became a certified court interpreter and community organizer who was happiest when helping farm workers and other poor people in the community. He spoke about Caesar and the movement up and down the California coast. Caesar often stayed at Ray's home while traveling through the Central Coast. Upon Ray's death, Caesar wrote, "Ray was one of those unique men and women who cared deeply and sacrificed much for the poor. And in the end, his courage and strength was a lesson for us all." Hector Abeytia, my uncle, was an activist and organizer in California's Central Valley. He was associated with AWOC, the Agriculture Workers Organizing Committee, the mostly Filipino union that began the Delano grape strike in 1965 and later merged with Caesar's union to form the UFW. Hector was heavily involved in the grape strike. In October of 1965, he was beaten by grower Charlie Despoto. For years, Hector spoke to anyone he could grab or who would listen at meetings, barbecues, and gatherings about the farm worker movement. More than 65 years ago, the Community Service Organization, a grassroots civil rights group in California and Arizona that Caesar later led, started empowering Hispanics and changing the course of history for their children. These brave men and women learned to hold house meetings, protest police brutality, and register people to vote. Our uncle, Ernie Abeytia, met Caesar in San Jose when they both joined the CSO, and Ernie became a lifelong friend and protege. Ernie, a grocery store owner, held meetings in his home and in the back room of his store, using milk crates for chairs. Ernie was the CSO local chapter president and became a pioneer for Latino and poor people's civil rights in the early 1950s. He was also a staunch UFW supporter and pioneering California activist who inspired many others. My brother, Benny Abeytia, began his activism with Caesar and the UFW in the 1970s. He devoted himself to the union, working in Arizona, California, Texas, and Chicago. He often took his children to farm worker marches and picket lines. When Caesar was in Phoenix, Benny wouldn't let his kids eat until late in the afternoon so they could learn about fasting and understand the sacrifices Caesar made. Though in declining health and not long before his death, Benny took his granddaughter Lucia to an immigration march to show her the ropes. It gave him great joy to pass on the torch. I was 17 years old in 1972 when my father, Pete, took me to the Santa Rita Center to meet Caesar, who was fasting. That began 9 years of my working full-time with the union. On the campaign to recall Arizona Governor Jack Williams, in the lemon strike in Yuma, the lettuce boycott in Chicago, and helping farm workers organize in Delano. Then I worked with Caesar at union headquarters at La Paz in Keene, California. Now as an oncology nurse, I continue trying to make a difference in people's lives. As a volunteer with the Catholic Church, I feed the homeless and teach English to immigrants. Sylvia